New details tonight on the plane crash in Virginia that claimed 4 lives, and that plane took off from right here in Northeast Tennessee.
Yeah, yesterday a Cessna Citation that took off from the Elizabethton Municipal Airport crashed outside of Montebello, Virginia. The pilot and 3 passengers who were on board died. Federal investigators say that at some point during that flight, the pilot became unresponsive. The plane, though, flew near its destination on Long Island, New York, before flying directly over restricted airspace in Washington, D.C., triggering a supersonic fighter jet's response.
Virginia State Police tell us they are on scene to collect the remains of the 4 people on board for an autopsy and identification. John Janko joins us in the studio with more on the early stages of this investigation. John?
Sarah Ansley, investigators with the National Transportation Safety Board are combing through the crash site at this hour, looking for any evidence as to what caused the crash, but it's going to take a while. The NTSB says the plane was destroyed, and investigators are expected to be on scene for the next 3 to 4 days.
Looking at when exactly did the pilot become unresponsive, and why did the airplane fly the flight track that it did fly? We don't know that information yet.
The Cessna Citation, numbered N611VG, took off from the Elizabethton Municipal Airport yesterday. At some point, the pilot became unresponsive, and the plane took a path right over Washington, D.C. A supersonic fighter jet response alarming many in the nation's capital. The Pentagon says those fighters did not shoot down the plane. Investigators will need to comb through the highly fragmented wreckage to find out why it happened.
This airplane was not required to have a black box or a cockpit voice recorder or flight data recorder. But we'll be looking at whether or not that equipment may have been installed.
The plane was registered to Florida-based Encore Motors of Melbourne Incorporated. John Rumpel, who runs the company, told the New York Times his daughter, 2-year-old granddaughter, and her nanny were on board along with the pilot. He says the family was visiting at his North Carolina home before flying back home to MacArthur Airport on Long Island. The manager at the Elizabethton Municipal Airport told News Channel 11 off camera the family had used the airport before, landing the Cessna Citation there 3 times. He says everything was routine as the plane refueled and departed on its final flight. Now investigators are racing to recover the most delicate evidence as quickly as possible.
The most important aspect of why we're here is to look at the perishable evidence. With the passage of time, it's going to get a lot more difficult to collect that information.
Investigators say the remote and rugged terrain has presented a challenge. The most critical pieces of wreckage may need to be removed by helicopter before further analysis at a lab in Delaware.
Basically sifting through what is available and looking at each component that might have some sort of piece of information.
The NTSB says it will release a preliminary report in the next 10 days. It could be as long as 2 years before a full report on this crash is released.
John, thanks. We have also learned from the Associated Press that the fighter pilots that intercepted the plane reported the pilot appeared to be slumped over at the controls.